Thanks for joining us on Shannons Club TV, where we look back on unique and sometimes overlooked cars on Australian roads and racetracks. If you haven't yet joined the Shannons Club, remember you can sign up free and gain access to a fascinating range of motoring content.
Now coming up, we'll hit the road with a proud owner of our feature car, and we get the latest market news from the Shannons auctions team. Right now though, the car that combined Beetle mechanicals with the finest of Italian styling. The Volkswagen Karmann Ghia.
The Volkswagen Karmann Ghia Type 14 made its debut in 1955, but was not sold locally until 1959. That imposing hyphenated name reflects the fact that it was designed by Ghia and built by Karmann. Who could have foreseen that Hitler's people's car would morph first into a sports car as the Porsche 356 and then into a beautiful, rakish designer coupe. With this gorgeous coupe body dropped onto a standard Beetle platform chassis, the Karmann Ghia combined Volkswagen performance with Ferrari rivaling looks. But despite being slow, it was absolutely as well suited to tough Australian road conditions as the Beetle on which it was based. Mark, I'm guessing this ruggedness could have made the Karmann Ghia quite a success in local rallying.
Well, it certainly had that beautiful low aerodynamic bodywork, but it was also longer, wider and heavier than the highly successful Beetle, and also a lot more expensive. So local rally crews tended to stick with the Beetle, one because it was cheaper, but also because it was much easier to get parts for, particularly out in the bush. I mean, imagine going to a farmer's door, knocking on there and saying, "Mate, have you got any parts for a
Karmann Ghia?" A what?
Yeah. So they tended to stick with the Beetle because it was far more practical in those applications.
By the early 1960s, when this special car began to sell in reasonable numbers here, many Australians were over the Beetle's too familiar styling, which was actually 15 years older than the original Holdens, and happily paid the 50% premium to buy Volkswagen Virtues without the perceived negative. Its modest performance would have been irrelevant to many owners. As the standard Beetle improved, so did the Karmann Ghia. The 1961 arrival of the 40 horsepower 1200cc engine and all-synchro gearbox was a big step up. Then in 1965 came the 1500 engine. Even the standard Beetle was renowned for the quality of its fittings, but the Karmann Ghia achieved a higher standard. The interior was elegant and completely in keeping with the outside. With the introduction of the new Type 3 1500, a second Karmann Ghia model was introduced. A small batch was sold in Australia, but it was no great success anywhere. The Beetle-based model soldiered on until 1968, but in 1966 it was completely overshadowed by the competitively priced and stylish 1600 Fastback, itself a beauty. The Karmann Ghia was the last ever car that allowed a buyer to specify a bespoke designer body over standard mechanicals. Later, Renault closed its Dauphine with a pretty coupe body, and Ford used Falcon mechanicals for the Mustang, but the Karmann Ghia remained unique in its combination of mass-produced standard mechanicals and a custom-built body. Mark, in standard form, the Karmann Ghia was pretty slow, but that was easily remedied, I guess.
Yeah, it sure was. And in Australian motorsport, it was achieved in a variety of ways. Given its humble Beetle-based origins, the Type 14 Karmann Ghia would probably not be top of a wish list of high-performance cars. But the stylish coupe boasts a diverse, if little-known, competition history in Australian motorsport. With suitable modifications, it proved to be very competitive in the rough and tough world of off-road racing. The wildest example, which competed in the late 1980s, was designed, built and driven with great skill by Steve Knott in the production car-based Class 5 of the Australian Off-Road Championship. The Karmann Ghia's engine location proved ideal, as it placed plenty of weight over the rear wheels for maximum traction. The original engine was replaced with a fully worked all-aluminium Renault V6, along with a tank-tough space frame chassis and almost half a metre of suspension travel. Although not narrowly missed out on winning the Class 5 title, his radical Karmann Ghia proved highly competitive and a car fondly remembered by its many fans. John, over the decades we've seen a multitude of different bodies mounted on VW Beetle chassis, predominantly dune buggies from my memory. But I reckon the Karmann Ghia was the classiest of them all.
The first Karmann Ghia.
Yeah.
Not the second
No, the
Karmann
Type
Ghia,
14.
And how fantastic was that in 1955?
That's
if you think
incredible.
about it, just 10 years after World War II, it was such a beautiful car. Out of one of the bespoke Italian carrozzeria, you know, the design houses, so that the body of a Ferrari or a Maserati on a Beetle.
I mean,
Wonderful.
in a modern day context, imagine being able to go into a VW dealer and say, you know, I want that body. You can't do that
You can't do anything like that now.
Yeah, amazing time, wasn't it?
Fantastic stuff.
The Karmann Ghia's local circuit racing history included a very fast sports sedan driven by Ken Hastings. It only raced for a brief period in the late 1970s, and in both appearance and chassis design, it looked like a downsized version of Frank Gardner's dominant Chevrolet Corvair. Like Gardner's car, there was a full space frame chassis with the engine mounted ahead of the rear axle line to create a true mid-engine layout. However, instead of a big 5-litre V8, Hastings fitted a 2-litre 4-cylinder Ford BDA with close to 300 brake horsepower and a Hewland transaxle. Hastings' Karmann Ghia set several 2-litre class lap records and scared many larger and more powerful V8 rivals with its astonishing speed and agile handling. Third place overall at the Calder Park round of the 1979 Australian Sports Sedan Championship, on a track that favoured big powerful cars, is a testament to its remarkable performance. However, a rule change on engine locations for 1980 effectively outlawed Gardner's Corvair, and with it, Hastings' amazing Karmann Ghia. You can read many other great road and race stories on the Shannons Club website.
Hi, my name is Anastasia Stone, and this is Ruby, my 1960 Type 1 Karmann Ghia, and I've had her for 14 years. They're great little cars, easily looked after. It's got a 1.6 litre engine in it, so it's not slow. Very enjoyable, quite smooth ride as well. It's an absolute pleasure to drive. So when I bought the car, it was in drivable condition. I just thought it just needs a bit of sprucing up. Then I thought the body needs to be repainted, and then it literally just snowballed. I pretty much wanted to get it to the state and colour combination that it is today. The accessories, I think, are what make the car stand out a lot more. In particular, the roof rack. I think it works well with the car and it works well with the lines of the car. So I've added a different steering wheel. It's called a banjo steering wheel. The horn button has a golden lady on it. And all the extras like the fog lights at the front, a few accessories at the back on the bumper bars. And I think that's what makes the car all the more classic looking. The minute I bought the Karmann Ghia, I joined Shannons. I've been insured with them since then, and I'm insuring all my other classic cars with Shannons. They've been great. They've been really helpful and got no problems in recommending them to any other classic car owners. She's something that I've wanted for a long time and something that I'd like to keep forever, and hopefully down the track maybe pass it on to somebody else who's as passionate about cars as I am.
For the latest market trends on the Karmann Ghia, we're joined by Chris Borobin from Shannons Auctions. Welcome, Chris.
Hi John, how are you?
Welcome to the show, mate.
Hi Mark.
We were talking before about relative values of classic Volkswagens. An oval window classic Beetle or a really nice Type 14 Karmann Ghia. Which would be worth more? Which is more desirable?
Probably sitting on par these days.
That's
Yeah.
interesting.
There's really strong demand for the oval windows, and equally we've seen a strong demand for the Series 1 Type 14 Karmann Ghias. Yeah.
I personally prefer the coupe to the convertible. I'm just wondering how they shape up against each other.
Yeah,
for
I agree with you on
collectors.
that. Yeah, I think that's quite an important point. The coupe
Roof line, isn't
That's
it?
right.
Yeah,
You maintain
Yeah.
the roof line, and I think I can directly compare it to the Porsche 911. you know, it is a prettier car with a roof than with a roof off.
E-Type too, I think.
E-Type, yep, to an extent. So I think that is a quite an important point, and hence why we see the values of Type 1 Karmanns at probably the same, if not higher than a convertible variant.
Now, given the strong local prices, there might be some people watching this show thinking it might be cheaper to go to the US, get a left-hand drive version and bring it back here. What's your thoughts on that?
Look, I think if you can find the right cars, you know, some people would be open to doing that. But I think looking at the VW community in recent years, you know, they're a lot more discerning in their choices these days.
Yeah, okay.
And I think they are looking for the history, and many of them do like to go for the Australian assembled or Australian delivered cars.
Yeah, that's understandable, yeah.
So we are seeing a bit of that trend.
But if you did it that way, you'd still have a left hooker. Now, that might suit you if you were buying a Mustang or a Corvette, but perhaps not a Karmann Ghia customer.
It looks, you know, there's a small number of people that are comfortable driving a left-hand drive car, but we find the majority here in Australia still prefer to drive a right-hand drive car. So it's personal preference on that one.
It's an amazingly practical classic though, isn't it? You can get this magnificent Italian styling house styling on really simple VW mechanicals.
It is. I mean, it's a very simple car to work on. The body can be tricky.
There is an issue there, I believe, with rust because of the the bespoke way the body was built. It's not. It didn't go through the normal Volkswagen processes. Yeah.
Yeah. So it is. You know, try and find a structurally safe, sound car. That's probably the key message. But the mechanicals are fairly easy.
Very good. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, Chris. And remember, you can keep up to date with the latest auction results on the Shannons Club website. If you'd like a lasting memory of the Volkswagen Karmann Ghia in competition, visit AutoPic's Motorsport Photo Archive.
John, looking back at the Karmann Ghia, I mean, this would have to be a classic example of styling over substance, wouldn't it?
Yes, it's a bit like a beetle in a ball gown when you think about it, isn't it? Really. But that's not to say the substance wasn't there. And you think about the substance of the original Beetle and how fantastically that went off in two totally different directions. The Porsche 356, a complete triumph of engineering. The Volkswagen Karmann Ghia, same starting point, a complete triumph of brilliant design.
Exactly, yeah.
We hope you've enjoyed reflecting on the supremely stylish Karmann Ghia, and we'll catch you next time on Shannons Club TV. Bye for now.